Today we're going to talk about Hinduism, which is really more of a collection of religious beliefs than a single unified religion. Hinduism has also been called the religion of India since it involves so many different beliefs, which are unified simply because they all originated on the Indian peninsula. The name Hinduism comes from the Sanskrit word Sindhu and gets its name from the Indus Valley civilization, which refers to the Indus River in India. This was originally a term that designated India, so Hinduism really means the religion of India. Hinduism traces its roots back to the Indus Valley civilization, or the Dasas. This was a highly developed and organized civilization that was only discovered in the 20th century with the finding of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. These were large cities dating from around 2750 BC and possibly much earlier. Originally, historians thought that Hinduism began when there was an Aryan invasion of India around the year 1800 BCE. The Aryans are a debated group of people. No one really knows who exactly the Aryans are, other than that they are from the Central Asia or Middle East area. They may have been Greek, Persian, or European in descent. In the invasion theory, the Aryans took over the Indus Valley area, and Hinduism began at this point, when it was brought by the Aryan civilization. The invasion theory has been criticized as being racist, since it assumes that there was no real religious culture or civilization in the Indian peninsula before the coming of the Aryan people. However, the migration theory has become more popular since the discovery of the Harappan civilization in what is now Pakistan. This civilization was very advanced and predates the Aryans, so historians thought that it was more likely that the Aryans simply migrated into the area and slowly influenced the Indian civilization. With the discovery of the Harappan culture, archaeologists found artifacts and drawings that could be Hindu deities, so a form of Hinduism may have existed long before the Aryan migration. Hinduism is now, therefore, thought to be born of a mingling of these two civilizations. However it happened, the Indus Valley civilization did not last, and the Indo-European or Aryan people took over the area, and Sanskrit, the written language they brought with them, became the dominant language. The main text of Hinduism, or the Vedas, are written in this language and date from around 1500 BCE. However, the chants and hymns are believed to have developed over hundreds of years, and therefore may be much older. The Vedas are a collection of books, including the Rig Veda, that contain religious myths, chants, hymns, and instructions for rituals. The Vedas are, if there could be said to be one, the one unifying factor of all Hindus. Belief in the Vedas as a sacred scripture has often been used as a litmus test for determining who is or is not a Hindu. The Vedas are an incredibly large collection of books, reaching into the hundreds of volumes. The Vedas are referred to as Shruti, which means that which is heard, which is the holiest classification for Hindu texts. The rishis, or seers, who wrote down the Vedas are believed to have heard the mantras from the gods themselves and recorded them. There are 4 Vedas, the Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva. Each of these collections have 4 portions: hymns, directions for sacred rituals, compositions of the forest or Aranyakas, and philosophical works called the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the most recent section of these works and also became the most popular. The Vedas do not talk about salvation or an afterlife, but focus more on rituals and living a happy life during one's lifetime. Again, Hinduism is not a single set of beliefs or ethics, but a collection of beliefs, deities, rituals, and practices that have been grouped together as Hindu. Hinduism as a single religion was really a product of the British colonial government, since they took census of Indian subjects and wanted to know what religion they were, and the term Hindu was much more convenient. Brahman is described as the eternal, unchanging, infinite, immanent, and transcendent reality, which is the divine ground of all matter, energy, time, space, being, and everything beyond this universe. Brahman is God with a capital G in Hinduism. He is eternal, has always been here, and always will be here. Brahman is more like a force or energy that pervades the entire universe. It is also the source of all life. All the gods came from Brahman, who in turn created the world and humanity. The many different gods in Hinduism are believed to be merely manifestations of different aspects of Brahman. Brahman is infinite and so can be manifested in an infinite number of ways. Brahman inhabits the entire universe and even one's soul. So Brahman is both the God of the universe and the universe itself. Brahman is not a personal deity that has a gender or human form, but is more like this energy or force that pervades the entire universe. In terms of myths of origins for people, we have the story of Manu. Manu was the first human being. The word for man in Sanskrit actually comes from his name. He was created by Brahma, with no N, who we'll talk about later, and was said to be perfectly honest and good. One day, while washing his hands in a river, a small fish swam into his hands. The fish's name was Mastya, although Manu didn't know what his name was. The fish asked Manu to protect him from the larger fish in the river, and in return he would save his life as well. Manu took the fish home, and the fish grew very large. When the fish grew so large that he wouldn't fit into any jars in Manu's house, Manu took him back to the river. The fish thanked Manu for saving his life and told him that he would now save his life in return. He told Manu that a flood was coming and that he should take his family and build a boat, and that the fish would lead him to a safe place where he could wait out the flood. And this is exactly what Manu did. He built a boat, he put his family inside of it, and the fish swam him to safety where they waited out the flood on this boat, which, as you may have realized, is very similar to the biblical story of Noah and the ark. There's a lot of interesting similarities between these two stories. So Manu and his family are believed to be the ancestors of all people living in the world, as all the rest of humanity was wiped out due to this flood. Now let's look at historical myths. In terms of the universe and the world we live in, the idea of samsara dominates in Hinduism as well as Buddhism, which we'll see later. Samsara is the universe and existence we are a part of, and it is a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. We as human beings are all trapped in samsara. Animals are also a part of samsara. We have lived countless numbers of lives before, and may live hundreds if not thousands of more lives in the future. Each individual person and animal has an Atman, or a soul. Our Atman is what continues with us from life to life. Despite the outward body, whether it's of an animal or a person, the Atman remains the same in our endless numbers of lifetimes. We are trapped in this cycle, however. Endless lifetimes are considered to be more of a curse in Hinduism and not a good thing. We must continue to live life after life in this realm of samsara because of our desire. Desire is what binds us to samsara and prevents a release from it. We desire things, success, wealth, relationships, but we also simply desire existence. We want to live and exist, so we continue to live in samsara. This desire is perpetuated by maya, or ignorance and illusion. This ignorance leads us to believe that samsara is the only real world and that we should remain bound to it. However, this world is only maya or ignorance, and one needs to see beyond it to realize that there is a possible release from this world, which is what we should strive to attain. We are all stuck in samsara, and therefore will continue to be reborn again and again. Our future births are determined by the karma we acquire in this lifetime. Karma means work, and it is everything that we do. Every action that we do in this lifetime makes either good or bad karma, which attaches to our Atman, or soul. Good actions develop good karma, and bad actions create bad karma. The karma that a soul or Atman has acquired over the course of its life will determine what form of life a person will have in their next birth. If someone has lots of bad karma, they may be born in a lower social status or even as an animal. If someone has lots of good karma, they could be reborn in a higher social class or even as a god. The gods are also considered a part of samsara. The goal of every Hindu is to achieve moksha, which means liberation. Moksha is the only way to escape samsara and the endless cycle of death and rebirth. Moksha is actually, in a way, non-existence. Someone who has achieved moksha will no longer be reborn after death. In order to ensure moksha at death, a Hindu must devote him or herself to their religion and achieve what is called Jnana Atman. Jnana Atman means self-realization, and it is understanding that Brahman, the eternal unchanging God, and Atman, one's personal soul, are in fact one. The personal soul inside each person or animal is the same as Brahman, the universal essence or force. If someone can come to a true understanding of that statement, then they can achieve moksha and be released from samsara. There are many ways that a person can come to this realization and achieve moksha. In Hinduism, there is not only one way to be religious. There are in fact 4 main paths for people to live a religious life. The decision as to which path a person will follow is a personal decision and depends largely on the person's individual personality and interests. Each of these paths is considered equal. These paths are called yogas or margas. Yoga means to yoke or to bind, and is supposed to represent a yoking or binding of the Atman to Brahman, and marga means path. Also, these 4 yogas can be combined. One doesn't have to choose simply one path to moksha. Usually Hindus combine aspects of many of these paths in their spiritual life. Now let's look at those paths. Jnana Yoga is the way of knowledge, so someone who chose this path would be a student or scholar of Hindu religion. This person would study the sacred scriptures like the Vedas or Upanishads and try to come to a realization of Brahman and Atman through intense study. Bhakti Yoga is the way of devotion, and the word bhakti means devotion. This is the most common path chosen by Hindus because it is easy to do while being a householder, which we'll talk about later. For this path, an individual will probably have a personal altar in his or her house or in their village of a favorite god or goddess, or several gods or goddesses. The Hindu will offer food and puja daily, which is a daily devotion ritual, to this deity as a way of showing their love or devotion for that goddess. So this path is one of worship of a particular god or goddess. Raja Yoga is the way of meditation. This way might be chosen by someone after they have finished raising a family and can devote more time to meditative practices. In this way, one realizes the truth of Brahman and Atman through meditation and contemplation. Karma Yoga is the way of selfless action. This is also a common way and may be combined with any of the other paths. Karma Yoga is simply living a good and ethical life. By devoting oneself to loving and treating others kindly, you can come to realize the interconnectedness of Brahman, Atman, and all the universe. Hinduism is a henotheistic religion, like the Hopi religion, which we already looked at. It is a mix between monotheism and polytheism, as we'll see, as there is one supreme god, Brahman, but this god can be worshipped through any of his manifestations in the other gods and goddesses. Brahman is the capital G god in Hinduism. Brahman cannot be personified. There is no picture of Brahman. Brahman is a force or essence that pervades the entire universe. It is the creative energy that brought the universe into existence and sustains the universe. Brahman is everywhere at once, even in our own souls. Brahman is the ultimate reality, although he is unseen and cannot really be directly worshipped. Although Brahman is the most important, there are estimates of there being 330 million gods within Hinduism. Although there are countless gods and goddesses to worship, these gods are understood as simply manifestations or particular attributes of Brahman. Because Brahman cannot be truly understood or seen, humans can only worship one part of him at a time. This is what all the individual gods represent. They are seen as simply avenues towards comprehending and grasping what Brahman truly is. Although there are reportedly millions of gods, there are 3 which are considered extremely important and can be referred to as the Hindu Trimurti or Hindu Trinity. They form a trinity together because they are considered the 3 main aspects of Brahman. Each one of these gods represent a main characteristic of Brahman. They are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma represents the creative aspect of Brahman, Vishnu is the sustainer, and Shiva is the destroyer. So they are the three characteristics of creation: creation, sustaining, and destruction. Each god also has a consort or female counterpart, so we can think of them as their girlfriends or wives. These goddesses, or the wives or female companions of the gods, are worshipped as equal to the gods and are quite popular in India. Now let's take a look at each of these gods and goddesses. Brahma is the god of creation. Once Brahman created him, he took over and is responsible for creating the world and humankind through Manu. At this point, I'd like to note that it's very important that you keep Brahman with an N and Brahma separate. The spelling is almost the same, but to remember that they are two very different deities. So Brahma, despite being the god of creation, is actually not very popular in India. He's not widely worshipped, and there are only 2 temples in all of India that are dedicated to him, and he really has no cult of devotees. He's also considered the author of the Vedas. He created the Vedas, which the people wrote down. So he is usually depicted with 4 heads, as you can see in this picture, as each head is supposed to be continuously reciting one of the 4 Vedas, as there are 4 main Vedas. Brahma's female consort or wife is Saraswati. Just as Brahma is the creator god, Saraswati is the goddess of creativity and knowledge, also which are human ways of creating. The gods and their female companions usually have similar areas that they have power over. The male and female are seen to work together, and one needs both elements in order to have true power. Saraswati is also the goddess of art, music, and literature, since these are also creative pursuits. Since she is the goddess of knowledge, Hindus often pray to her for help with school, and of course she is especially important to artists in Hindu society. She's also considered the mother of the Vedas, since she's the wife of the author of the Vedas. As you can see in this picture, she's often shown with many arms because she is involved in so many aspects of creativity. Each hand is usually shown with a different tool of creativity, such as a paintbrush, a pen, or a musical instrument. Vishnu is the sustainer or maintainer god. Vishnu is known for his concern and love of humanity. More than Brahma and Shiva, he loves human beings and wants to make sure they are okay. So he often intercedes in human history to help them, thereby sustaining their existence. He is therefore known as the god of kindness and benevolence and is very popular in India. He is worshipped by some as the supreme god or the supreme way of understanding Brahman. Because of his concern for humanity, he is believed to have come to Earth 9 times as avatars, or human or animal forms. One of these forms was the fish that saved Manu. So this was his first avatar. He helped Manu because he did not want to see all of humanity wiped out. Some of his other avatars have been Rama or Krishna, who are great heroes and very important in Hinduism. Some people also believe that Buddha was an avatar of Vishnu. This was a way of combating the popularity of Buddhism in the Indian peninsula. Buddhism began in India and spread quickly, so understanding Buddha as Vishnu was a way of incorporating Buddhism into Hinduism, so it lost a lot of popularity and is not a dominant religion in India anymore. Lakshmi is the female consort of Vishnu. She is the goddess of wealth, prosperity, wisdom, fortune, fertility, and generosity. Lakshmi is the consort of Vishnu, as I said, or the wife of Vishnu, and she shares his love for humankind, so she also tries to help them in any way she can. She is the goddess of these aspects that I mentioned, wealth, prosperity, fortune, etc. So Hindus often pray to her for help with financial issues or for help with bearing children. Due to her love of humans, she is believed to protect her worshippers from tragedy and bring them good luck. Shiva is the god of destruction and of dance. He is also very popular and worshipped as the supreme god by some. Even though he is the god of destruction, it's important to note that this is not considered a bad thing, nor is he an evil god in Hinduism. For Hindus, death and destruction is merely the precursor to rebirth, so death is associated more with change or transition, and great power since it precedes creation. He is also worshipped in the form of the linga, which you can see in the lower picture here, which is basically a phallic symbol, because he is also the god of fertility. Death and fertility are closely linked in Hinduism because death leads to rebirth. The linga is believed to predate the Aryan civilization and go back to the Indus Valley civilization. Because he is the god of fertility, he is also believed to have multiple female consorts. So Shiva actually has several girlfriends and wives. Since he is also the god of dance, he is often portrayed dancing on the demon dwarf Muyalaka, who you can see in the larger picture here. So destruction is also associated with the destruction of evil. So it's important to note that he is still seen as a good god. Destruction isn't a bad thing in Hinduism. Now let's look at Kali. Kali is one of the female consorts of Shiva, although she is definitely the most popular. She's also known as Durga and is the goddess of destruction. Kali is the goddess of energy, time, and change, because those are all aspects closely associated with death and destruction. Death is just change in Hinduism. It is changing into another form. Her name means the black one, and she is associated with annihilation and destruction. As you can see here, she's often portrayed with a garland of skulls around her neck and decapitated heads in her hands. These heads, however, are the heads of evil demons that she has destroyed. Despite her terrifying appearance, Kali is very popular in Hinduism and is seen as a protective mother figure. Just as any mother would do, she would destroy all those who try to harm her devotees or children. In Hindu doctrine, immanence, or knowledge that is found within ourselves, is the way to knowledge, because we have an Atman that is the same as Brahman. So in Hinduism, people look inside themselves for their spiritual nature. The Hindu gods are also worshipped, but in an intimate, devotional way. The individual gods are seen as close personal avenues to Brahman. They are brought into the worshipper's home through figurines or small statues that are believed to actually house the god if it has been blessed by a Hindu priest. So these personal deities are in fact very personal and live in the home of the devotee almost as a house guest. These physical representations are not themselves the god, though they are considered devotional aids to help the worshipper focus on that particular deity in order to worship it in a more personal way. So although the gods are worshipped as something outside of ourselves, they are simply manifestations of Brahman, which is the same as Atman, or our soul, which is inside of ourselves. So ultimately, self-knowledge is needed to achieve moksha in Hinduism, to understand that the Atman and Brahman are the same. The Ganges is a river in India and is also believed to be a goddess, and the city of Benares along the Ganges River is one of the holiest sites in Hinduism. The Ganges is considered the mother of India and really has nourished India throughout its history. Hindus believe that bathing in the Ganges River removes impurities and bestows grace and good karma. Hindus also wish to be cremated in the Ganges. Anyone who can afford this has it done. The bodies are pushed into the river and set on fire so that the river becomes their eternal resting place. This is the most common form of Hindu funeral. For soteriology, the main problems that Hinduism sees in the world would be pollution, desire, and not performing proper actions. In Hinduism, purity and impurity are very important, and not following certain social rules results in pollution or impurity. Many of these rules have to do with the caste system, which we'll talk about a little bit later. For instance, a Brahmin is not supposed to eat food prepared by someone from a lower caste, because that would result in pollution or impurity. Also, marrying outside of one's caste is considered polluting, and children of that marriage are considered polluted, since they don't belong to any single caste. It can also be simply eating certain foods at certain holy times of the year, etc. Desire is a problem for Hindus because desire for existence in this world is what is seen to keep individuals trapped in this cycle of samsara. So a letting go of all desire is seen as a good thing because it helps one achieve moksha. Also, proper action is very ethically important, as we shall see later. Each person is supposed to perform the actions and duties proper to their role. This can be connected to your caste, or simply your role as a student, daughter, son, mother, teacher, employee, etc. Each person has many of these roles and should perform the proper action respective of those roles. The Vedas are the most important sacred text in Hinduism. They date back to around 1500 to 1700 BCE, although they are believed to have developed over hundreds of years and may date back much longer. Although they are no longer widely read, they are still considered a unifying factor for Hindus, that someone can be considered a Hindu if they believe the Vedas are a sacred text. However, many of the gods that they mention, such as Indra and Agni, are actually no longer worshipped, or are now called by different names. Most of the early hymns do not speak of moksha or mention reincarnation, but simply ask for a happy and successful life. So the Vedas are still considered the most sacred text in Hinduism, but it's a very difficult and dense text, and therefore is not as widely read as some of the other sacred texts in Hinduism. Now let's move on to the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the most recent section of each Veda and have now been combined into their own collection, so you can simply read just the Upanishads in their own volume. They are different from the Vedas in that they do not tell stories about the gods or give instructions for rituals, but instead are philosophical meditations on the Vedas themselves. Many scholars believe that the Upanishads are a reaction to growing dissatisfaction with the Vedic ritualistic religion around this time. Because only Brahmins, or the highest social caste, could perform the rituals, the majority of society was actually alienated from their own religion. The Upanishads mostly take the form of a student and teacher conversation, with the teacher imparting some important lesson to the student that goes beyond the Vedas. It is also the first time that Brahman and Atman as one are mentioned. It deals largely with the nature of Brahman and how it is one with Atman. This is the primary source material that you'll be reading for Hinduism. It is one of the Upanishads, or one story from the Upanishads, that has become very popular. Now let's talk about the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, which means Song of the God, is one section of the larger poem known as the Mahabharata. This epic poem tells the story of a civil war between two families, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The Bhagavad Gita is one section of this poem in which Arjuna, a Pandava prince, hesitates before the start of the battle because he sees his friends and people he knows on the other side of the battlefield and doesn't want to fight them. His chariot driver is actually Krishna, an avatar of Vishnu, although Arjuna doesn't know this at first. Krishna reveals himself as the Lord Vishnu and tells Arjuna that he must fight because it is his duty as a member of the warrior caste and to ensure peace in India. It really is a meditation on karma, that the most ethical action is one in which you act according to your duty, do what you have to do, but with no regard for the reward or punishment. It is an interpretation of how to act in modern times according to the values of the Upanishads. So the main message in the Bhagavad Gita is that you need to do what has to be done regardless of your own feelings towards that action. Even though Arjuna doesn't want to fight, he doesn't want to have to kill people that he knows, it's his duty because it is for the greater good of India. The Bhagavad Gita was also largely popular with Western philosophers and writers. Some writers like Jack Kerouac and Ralph Waldo Emerson were very inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. Now let's talk about ritual. On a daily basis, many Hindus will perform puja, which is a daily form of devotion or bhakti. Hindus will normally have either a household altar or a village altar to which they will bring offerings of food, flowers, incense, etc. The food that is offered to the altar or the statue of a particular god or goddess will be eaten afterwards, but is believed to be purified and blessed because it has been offered to the god or goddess. There is no holy day of the week for Hindus, but on a regular basis, maybe once a month or so, a Hindu may visit a local temple to offer puja to the larger altar, or be involved in a more official ceremony with the Hindu priest. Hindu temples are open gathering places for worshippers. There is no regular service that has an instructional lesson, but worshippers come to the temple on various holidays associated with certain deities. It's a more free-flowing place where people come and go, bring offerings to the statue of their favorite god, participate in a prayer with the priest, etc. The temples are considered to be the home of that particular god or goddess, and each temple is dedicated to one or even a few gods or goddesses. So a worshiper would visit the temple of their favorite god. In North American temples, however, usually the temples contain a statue or altar for many gods or goddesses because one temple has to serve a much larger and more diverse community. There are many holidays in Hinduism because there are so many gods and goddesses, and each has some sort of holiday or special ceremony associated with him or her. However, two quite important ones that are celebrated throughout India are Holi and Diwali. Holi is a spring festival that is called the Festival of Colors and is celebrated by throwing colored powder and water on other people. In some areas of India, it commemorates the killing of a demon who wanted all people to stop worshipping the god Vishnu. In other areas, it celebrates the love between Krishna, an avatar of Vishnu, and Radha, his girlfriend. Radha complained that her skin color was not as colorful as Krishna's blue skin, so her mother put colored powder on her face to make her as beautiful as Krishna. It's also celebrated by lighting a large bonfire, which commemorates the death of another evil demon. Diwali is the Hindu New Year and occurs in late fall. It is referred to as the Festival of Lights and is short for Deepavali, which means row of lamps. It commemorates the return of King Rama, another one of Vishnu's avatars, from his 14-year exile from the epic poem Ramayana. This is a famous story in Hinduism and tells the story of King Rama, an avatar of Vishnu, who is exiled from his home by his own parents because his stepmother wants her son to become king instead of him. On the day of his return from exile, the people of the kingdom lit candles to celebrate his return and show him the way home. So Hindus today celebrate Diwali by lighting candles and putting them all around their households, eating sweet foods and getting together for large meals. In terms of the life cycle, a Hindu's life is divided into various stages that were set out in a work called the Code of Manu. The Code of Manu is a book of rules and regulations that comes from medieval times, not from the first Manu, and sets out all the rules that a Hindu must follow in his or her life. So the Code of Manu divides a person's life into 4 stages. The first stage is that of the student. A young boy or girl is expected to leave home around the age of 12 to go study the Vedas or a particular trade. During this time, a young person is supposed to be celibate. They often live with their teachers or at their school, and their life is supposed to be focused completely on learning. The second stage is that of the householder. This is when a man or woman is expected to marry, have a job, and raise a family. During this time, a person is allowed to desire possessions, success, and happy family life. They are allowed to devote themselves to their family, and religious duties take somewhat of a backseat to family life. So during this time, it's okay to focus on your job, on your family, and to want nice things because you're providing them for your family. However, during this time, it's not appropriate to devote one's time to studying because that belongs to the student stage. The third stage is that of withdrawal. Once a man or woman has raised his children and seen them grow up and get married and set up their own family life, a man and his wife are expected to withdraw a bit from society. This is sort of like our definition of retirement. In their old age, they are no longer required to work, and they likely live with their children and their families. So they don't have to be accountable for as many household chores or duties. So the couple is free to devote themselves more fully to religious matters during this time. They still interact with the family, but now have the free time to perform puja, to study the sacred scriptures, and engage more in meditation. The last stage of life is that of the sannyasi, which is complete withdrawal from society and is not understood to be for everyone. It's a personal choice if you want to enter the stage of sannyasi, but it's not required. If a man or woman desires in their old age to withdraw completely from society and family life to devote themselves to their spirituality, they can go off in the forest and choose to live as beggars. They become mendicants or wandering beggars who live as simply as possible and are free to devote themselves completely to meditation, scriptural study, yoga, and their spirituality in general. Religious experience in Hinduism is overwhelmingly mystical and immanent. Individual gods, such as Vishnu and Shiva, are worshipped in an intimate way and are believed to be somehow present in the statues that are dedicated to them and blessed by priests. Bhakti or devotion is often put into the wording of human erotic or romantic love. For example, the stories of Radha and Krishna are very popular and tell how Krishna, an avatar of Vishnu, made love to Radha and many other cowherders in his village. This image of erotic love is believed to be a spiritual allegory of the way the worshipper should love the Lord Vishnu. So even spiritual love is often described in human romantic terms. Humans are often believed to be incarnations of gods or goddesses. Frequently, people who dedicate themselves to a certain god or goddess are believed to become houses of that spiritual deity. So worshiping and taking care of that person is a way of worshiping the god or goddess. Even Brahman, the god that is beyond all description in human words or characteristics, is encouraged to ultimately be experienced in a mystical way. As one begins to understand the nature of Brahman more and more, he or she should understand that Brahman is also present in their own soul. So a numinous experience should eventually become a mystical one. As for Hindu ethics, the idea of dharma prevails. Dharma can be translated as righteous duty or religious duty. This idea really originates from the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna's speech to Arjuna about why he should fight and kill the other soldiers. It has to do with performing your proper duty according to your role and station in life, but always doing it without any regard for the reward or punishment of that action. So you should always do what is right for your role, for your station, your position in life, but not care about receiving any reward or attention for doing it. You do it just because it needs to be done. This is an interesting ethical system because it is relative. What is a proper action changes throughout your life as you move through the 4 stages of life, and it changes throughout the day based on the particular role you are fulfilling. What may be a proper action in your home may not be a proper action at work or school. Furthermore, total devotion to study is okay during the student stage of someone's life, but not appropriate during the householder stage, because you have to focus on and take care of your family. And there's different stages of one's life in which it is more appropriate to dedicate oneself to one's religion and spirituality. If you do what is appropriate but don't care about earning good karma, then you will actually earn good karma. This good karma somehow attaches to your Atman or soul and is influential in determining your position in the next life. Hindu society is dominated by the caste system, which is an ancient hierarchical system that organizes society and is still very much a part of Hindu society, although there are different interpretations of the importance of it. And Hindu society is in transition, so some of the more traditional views are definitely changing and being modernized today. The caste system is divided into 4 caste groups, and one group that is actually below the caste system and therefore known as the outcasts. The highest class system are the Brahmins, who are the priestly caste. Traditionally, they were the priests and religious scholars in Hindu society. Today, a priest will come from the Brahmin caste, but not all Brahmins necessarily become priests, although they are expected to devote themselves to the religion. The next caste is the Kshatriyas, which is traditionally the warrior caste. They were traditionally the soldiers in Indian society. The next caste is that of the Vaishyas, or merchants, who are traditionally business people. And the lowest castes are the Shudras, or servant class, who usually worked for the other 3 castes in labor-related jobs. The outcasts, or Dalits, are a group of people who were considered to be even lower than the caste system, and are therefore called outcasts. So this is a very traditional view of Hindu society and doesn't hold as much sway today in contemporary Indian society. For example, the outcasts have radically changed their position in Indian society, largely due to the work of Gandhi, who thought that the outcasts should be elevated and treated as equals in Hindu society. So today there are many laws in the Indian government to protect outcasts from discrimination or prejudice. This four-part caste system, as I said, doesn't have as much influence today as do the jatis, or smaller subgroups based on geographical location, religious groups, occupations, socioeconomic status, and the extended family relations. Today, one's jati has a lot more influence than one's caste group. The jati will have more influence in deciding, for example, who someone will marry and what their job will be. Additionally, the Indian government has promoted many affirmative action measures to help the outcast group move up in society. Today, outcasts have secured spots in the government and can receive federal funding for school or health care, among other things. Religiously, the caste system is said to be the result of the sacrifice of the supreme person, Purusha. In Hindu mythology, there is a story of the creation of human beings and society from this person named Purusha, a supreme person who was sort of like a divine giant. In the story, Purusha is sacrificed, and from his body the caste system was made. Brahmins came from his head, hence they usually hold the more intellectual jobs in society. The Kshatriyas from his arms, so associated with the strength or the warriors of society. The Vaishyas from his legs, associated with support, they are the ones who support the whole society. And the Shudras from the feet, who carry the entire system. This story shows that the caste system is supposed to work as an organic whole, all working together to create a peaceful, efficient society. In India, this religious social organization pervades all aspects of life. So there's really no separation between religion and society in India. So we have a system of complete integration.